New Year's Eve had always been special for Rachel and me. It was our tradition to start the night at a friend's party and end it on our rooftop, sharing a quiet toast under fireworks. That was the kind of thing you imagine doing forever when you're in love, or at least when you think you are. This year, though, Rachel claimed she had to work late. She'd been putting in extra hours at the firm for weeks, preparing for some big project. I didn't question it. I never had a reason to, until that night. "Babe, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice dripping with regret over the phone. "I'll probably miss the countdown, but I'll come straight home after." I had my suspicions. Lately, Rachel's excuses have been piling up. Work meetings, client dinners, business trips. They had all sounded plausible. But there was something about her tone this time, something rehearsed. "It's okay," I said, hiding my frustration. "We'll celebrate when you get back." "Love you," she said quickly before hanging up. I spent the evening at my best friend Eric's party, but my mind wasn't there. I kept checking my phone, waiting for Rachel to text me or at least give me an update. Midnight came and went, and still no word. That's when I got the message. It was a text from an unknown number. "You should see this. Happy New Year." Attached was a video. I stepped outside to watch it, my heart already racing. The video was shaky, clearly taken on someone's phone at a crowded party. At first, it was just a sea of people cheering and counting down. Then the camera zoomed in on two figures standing near the edge of the room. It was Rachel, unmistakably her, dressed in the red dress I had complimented that morning. And she wasn't alone. Next to her was a man I didn't recognize, tall, dark-haired, his arm casually draped around her waist. As the clock struck midnight, he pulled her close. She didn't resist. Instead, she leaned in and kissed him. The world around me went silent. I replayed the video twice, hoping I was wrong, that it wasn't her. But it was. My hands trembled as I typed back. "Who is this?" The reply came almost immediately. "A friend. You deserve to know the truth." I didn't go back inside. Instead, I drove home. Every second of that video burned into my brain. By the time I walked to the front door, my anger had reached a boiling point. Rachel still wasn't home. Her purse was on the counter. Her work laptop was neatly placed in its usual spot for someone who claimed to be working late. She hadn't taken much with her. I sat down at the dining table, staring at the clock. At 2 a.m., the front door finally opened. "Hey," Rachel said softly, trying to sound cheerful but failing. She froze when she saw me sitting there. "You're still up?" "I couldn't sleep," I said, my voice cold. "How was work?" She hesitated, her eyes darting toward the hallway. "Busy, you know how it is." "Sure," I said, standing up, "but I don't think that's why you're late." Her face paled. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and played the video, letting the sound of the countdown and cheers fill the room. Her expression shifted from shock to panic in a matter of seconds. "Jack, I can explain," she stammered. "Please do," I said, crossing my arms. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you spent New Year's with someone else." She launched into a flurry of excuses, her voice cracking as she tried to justify what I had seen. "It was a mistake, Jack. He's just a colleague. It didn't mean anything." "Didn't mean anything?" My voice rose. "You kissed him, Rachel, on New Year's, while I was waiting for you to come home." "It was the alcohol," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I wasn't thinking. I'm so sorry." I laughed bitterly. "Don't insult my intelligence, Rachel. This wasn't some drunk mistake. You've been lying to me for weeks, haven't you?" Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. "Who is he?" I demanded. She hesitated. "A co-worker. His name is Brian. But it's over, Jack. I swear." "Over?" I repeated. "You just kissed him a few hours ago. That doesn't sound like over to me." Rachel reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Jack, please," she begged. "I love you. I made a mistake, but we can fix this." "No," I said, stepping back. "You made your choice, Rachel, and now I'm making mine." I walked out of the room, leaving her standing there, sobbing. In that moment, I knew there was no going back. Rachel had destroyed the trust we built, and no amount of tears or apologies could fix it. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The next morning, Rachel was already up when I came downstairs. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes puffy and red, a cup of untouched coffee in front of her. "Jack," she said softly as I walked in, "we need to talk." I ignored her, heading straight for the coffee maker. I wasn't ready to hear whatever excuses she had rehearsed overnight. "Please," she continued, her voice cracking. "I know I messed up, but I need you to understand." I cut her off. "I understand perfectly, Rachel. You've been lying to me for months. So unless you're planning to start telling the truth, don't waste my time." She flinched at my words, but I didn't care. After a tense silence, she finally spoke. "It didn't start the way you think," she said, her hands trembling around the coffee cup. "Brian and I worked on a project together, and we just clicked. It wasn't supposed to go beyond that." I laughed bitterly. "And yet, there you were, kissing him at midnight while I was sitting at home waiting for you. Sounds like it went pretty far to me." Her face crumpled. "It was a mistake, Jack. I was stupid. I let it get out of hand. But I ended it, I swear." I shook my head. "Do you honestly expect me to believe that?" I didn't wait for her response. Instead, I grabbed my phone and walked out of the house. I needed air, space, anything to get away from her suffocating presence. As I sat in my car, I replayed the video for what felt like the 100th time. My blood boiled every time I saw her leaning into Brian. Her face lit up with a smile I hadn't seen in months. That afternoon, I decided it was time to dig deeper. If Rachel wasn't going to give me the truth, I'd find it myself. I started by calling Eric, my best friend. "Hey, man," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You know anyone named Brian? Works with Rachel." Eric paused. "Brian? Oh, yeah. He was at my party a few months ago. Tall guy, dark hair." "Why?" "Just trying to figure some things out," I said. "What do you know about him?" "Not much," Eric admitted. "Seemed friendly enough. But he was glued to Rachel the whole night. I thought it was weird, but I didn't want to stir the pot." My grip on the phone tightened. So this wasn't new. They'd been cozying up to each other right under my nose. Next, I scrolled through Rachel's social media accounts. She rarely posted anything personal, but I noticed a few tag photos from office events. In one, she and Brian were standing next to each other, laughing at something off camera. The caption read, "Dream Team at the Holiday Gala." The photo was dated 2 weeks before New Year's Eve. I wasn't satisfied with just pictures. I needed proof. Hard evidence that Rachel and Brian's relationship wasn't as innocent as she claimed. That's when I remembered the text I'd received from the unknown number. I sent a reply. "I appreciate the video. Can you tell me who you are?" The response came within minutes. "Let's just say I'm someone who doesn't like cheaters. There's more where that came from if you want it." More. My heart raced as I typed back. "Send it." The videos started coming in one by one. Each clip was worse than the last. There was Rachel and Brian at another party, holding hands when they thought no one was looking. Another showed them walking out a restaurant together, their faces close as they spoke in hushed tones. The final video was from a hotel lobby. Rachel and Brian stepped off an elevator, laughing softly before heading toward the front desk. When I got home that evening, Rachel was waiting for me, her face a mix of guilt and desperation. "Jack," she began, her voice trembling. "I know you're angry, but we can work through this. Please, just give me a chance to prove how sorry I am." I stared at her, my expression cold. "Are you done lying to me?" "I'm not lying," she insisted. Without a word, I pulled out my phone and opened the videos, playing them one by one. The damning evidence filled the room, and her face went pale. "You ended it, huh?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's funny because this doesn't look like over to me." She tried to speak, but no words came out. I didn't give her the chance to explain. "You made your choices, Rachel." I said, my tone icy. "Now it's my turn." Her eyes widened. "What does that mean?" she asked, panic creeping into her voice. "You'll find out soon enough," I replied, walking past her to the bedroom. As I closed the door behind me, I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. Rachel thought she could manipulate me with her tears and empty promises, but I wasn't falling for it. The countdown to midnight had passed, so had my patience. Now, it was time for her to face the consequences. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rachel and Brian, laughing, holding hands, sneaking kisses when they thought no one was watching. Her betrayal wasn't just a single moment caught on camera. It was months of lies, woven so tightly into our lives that I couldn't believe I had missed them. But I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. The next morning, Rachel was waiting for me in the kitchen, looking fragile and contrite. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and she clutched a cup of coffee like it was her lifeline. "Jack," she said softly as I walked in, "please, can we talk?" I ignored her, pouring myself a cup of coffee and sitting down across the table. "I've already said everything I need to," I replied coldly. "You don't understand," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "It was a mistake, Jack. I got caught up in something I shouldn't have. But it didn't mean anything. It's over now." Her words were almost laughable. "Didn't mean anything?" I repeated, shaking my head. "You've been sneaking around with him for months, Rachel. That doesn't happen by accident." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "You've been lying to me this whole time," I continued. "You think I don't know about the hotel? The dinners? The parties where you couldn't keep your hands off him?" Her face turned ashen. How do you know about that?" I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee. "Because someone filmed it." I said coolly, "You might want to think about who your real friends are, Rachel. Not everyone's as good at covering for you as you think." Her tears turned into full-blown sobs, but I didn't feel a shred of sympathy. "Do you know what hurts the most?" I asked, my voice steady. "It's not just the cheating. It's the fact that you let me sit at home, waiting for you, while you were out playing happy couple with him on New Year's. You destroyed that." "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "No," I said firmly. "You're sorry you got caught." After breakfast, I went back to work on my plan. Rachel still didn't know just how far I was willing to go to make sure she faced the consequences of her actions. The first step was Brian. With a little help from social media, I tracked him down online. His profile was as smug as I expected. Photos of him at fancy restaurants, work events, and even a few selfies in front of luxury cars. He looked like the kind of guy who thought he could do no wrong. I sent him a private message. "I know what you've been doing with Rachel. You got 24 hours to come clean to your wife, or I will." I wasn't surprised when he didn't respond right away. Guys like Brian always thought they were untouchable. Later that day, I received a text from the same unknown number that had sent me the video. "Brian's married, by the way. His wife deserves to know the truth." I didn't need the reminder. I had already done my homework and found her contact information. Her name was Claire. From the photos on her profile, she seemed like the complete opposite of Brian, warm, kind, and totally unaware of the kind of man she was married to. I debated whether to send her the evidence immediately or wait for Brian to crack under the pressure. Ultimately, I decided to give him a chance to do the right thing. That evening, Rachel tried again to apologize. "Jack," she said as I sat in the living room, scrolling through my phone. Rachel stood in the doorway of the living room, her eyes red and swollen. "Jack," she said softly, "we need to talk." I didn't look up from my phone. "What's there to talk about?" Her voice trembled. "About us. About what's happening." I finally looked at her, my expression cold. "There is no us, Rachel. Not anymore." She stepped closer, wringing her hands. "I know I've hurt you. I know I've broken your trust. But I want to fix it. Please, Jack, let me try." I set my phone down and met her gaze, unyielding. "You think you can fix this with a few apologies and promises?" My voice was sharp, cutting. "You lied to me for months. You celebrated New Year's with another man while I sat at home waiting for you. And now, you think you can just undo it?" She didn't respond. Tears streamed down her face. But I didn't care. "I'm done," I said, standing up. "You destroyed what we had. There's no coming back from that." Rachel didn't argue. She just sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I watched her for a moment, feeling nothing but emptiness. Then I turned and walked away, locking the bedroom door behind me. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a reply from Brian. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble. Can we meet and talk this out?" I smirked. Trouble? He hadn't seen anything yet. "Meet me at 2 p.m. at the coffee shop on 5th. I replied. At exactly 2 p.m., Brian walked in, his expression guarded. He spotted me immediately and hesitated before taking the seat across from me. "Jack," he began cautiously, "I know this looks bad, but—" "No," I cut him off. "There's no but. It doesn't just look bad. It is bad." He shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Rachel and I, it just kind of happened. Save it." I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. "Here's what's going to happen, Brian. You're going to tell your wife everything. If you don't, I will. And believe me, I've got all the proof she needs." His face drained of color. "You can't do that." I leaned forward, my voice cold. "Oh, I can. You've got until the end of the day. After that, Claire gets the full story." Brian left the coffee shop looking rattled, his smugness replaced with fear. I felt a surge of satisfaction. He wasn't so confident now, not with his carefully curated life hanging by a thread. As I drove home, I couldn't help but wonder how Rachel would react when she realized Brian's world was about to collapse along with hers. But that was her problem now. I was just getting started. By the time I got home that evening, the fallout had already begun. Sitting at the kitchen table, I scrolled through social media. A post on Claire's profile caught my eye. "Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you the most. Betrayal cuts deep, but the truth will set you free." More to come. It didn't take long for the comments to roll in. "Are you okay, Claire? What happened?" Her response was a single sentence. "Ask Brian." I smirked. That was only the beginning. People loved a scandal, and it was only a matter of time before Claire started sharing the full story. Meanwhile, Rachel hovered around the house like a ghost. She wasn't her usual polished self anymore. Her hair was unkempt, and the makeup she once wore every day was gone. She barely spoke to me, which was fine by me, but that night she broke the silence. "Jack," she whispered, standing in the doorway. "I know I can't undo what I've done, but I want to make it right. Can we please talk to someone? A counselor? A therapist? Anything." I looked up at her, my expression hard. "Do you really think therapy is going to fix this?" She hesitated. "It's worth a try, isn't it?" "No," I said bluntly, "because I don't trust you, Rachel. And without trust, there's nothing to fix." She burst into tears again, but I'd stopped caring. Her emotions felt like a performance, an act to get me to lower my guard. I watched her retreat to the bedroom, a grim sense of satisfaction settling over me. She was finally starting to feel the weight of her actions. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. The next day, I decided to escalate things. Brian may have confessed to Claire, but Rachel still hadn't faced the consequences of her actions. She was trying to hide from reality, and I wasn't going to let her. I started by gathering every piece of evidence I had, the videos, the photos, the text I'd intercepted from her phone. I compiled it all into a folder on my laptop. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot that Rachel's family chat exploded within minutes of me hitting send. Emily, her younger sister, was the first to reply. "Rachel, what the hell is this? Is this true?" Then her mother chimed in. "Rachel, please tell me this isn't real. Call me." Immediately, from the other room, I heard Rachel's phone buzz nonstop. Her voice rose in panic as she tried to explain herself, her words frantic and jumbled. But the damage was done. That evening, she stormed into the living room, eyes blazing. "How could you?" she shouted. "You sent to my family? Do you have any idea what you've done?" I stayed calm, unfazed by her fury. "I didn't do anything, Rachel." "You did. All I did was show them the truth." Her hands balled into fists. "You humiliated me," she screamed. "Good." I snapped, my patience finally breaking. "You deserve to feel humiliated. You deserve to feel every ounce of pain you caused me. Maybe then you'll understand what you've done." She stood there, chest heaving, anger warring with despair. Then, without another word, she turned and slammed the door behind her. The next day, Rachel scrambled to salvage what little dignity she had left. I overheard her on the phone with Emily, pleading for forgiveness. Her mother, ever the traditionalist, was horrified. "I raised you better than this," she said, her voice cold with disappointment. "How could you throw away your marriage for some fling?" Emily wasn't any kinder. "You're lucky Jack hasn't thrown you out on the street." Meanwhile, Brian wasn't faring much better. Claire had gone scorched earth. She posted screenshots of texts between him and Rachel, photos from their hotel rendezvous, even snippets of conversations she'd recorded. It was a public execution, and people ate it up. That evening, Rachel finally broke. As we sat in the dimly lit living room, she spoke quietly. "I'll leave." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "If that's what you want, I'll go." I studied her, unreadable. "It's not about what I want, Rachel. It's about what you did, and you need to live with that." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'll pack my things tomorrow." As she walked out of the room, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, sadness, relief. This wasn't how I imagined our marriage ending, but at least it was finally over. Rachel thought she could have it all, thought she could hide her betrayal behind a smile and a few well-placed lies. But now her facade was gone, and all that was left was the truth. She had no one to blame but herself. The morning Rachel packed her things, the house was eerily quiet. She didn't speak, didn't try to plead with me or defend herself anymore. The defiance and crocodile tears had been replaced by a hollow resignation. I stood in the doorway, watching as she moved through the house, boxing up the pieces of her life. Each room she passed through felt lighter, like her presence had been a weight I hadn't fully realized I was carrying. By midday, her car was loaded. She paused at the door, her eyes darting toward me one last time. "Jack," she said, her voice trembling, "I know you hate me, and I don't blame you, but I'm sorry for everything." I met her gaze, my expression cold. "You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught." She opened her mouth as if to respond, but no words came. Finally, she nodded and walked out the door without another word. The house felt empty after she left, but not in a bad way. It was the kind of emptiness that came with clarity, with the promise of a fresh start. I didn't waste time mourning what we'd lost. There was nothing left to mourn. Instead, I focused on making sure the wreckage Rachel left behind wouldn't follow me into this new chapter of my life. Later that day, my phone rang. It was Claire. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, "for telling me the truth about Brian. I don't know how much longer I would have stayed in the dark if you hadn't stepped in." "You deserve to know," I replied simply. "No one should have to live with lies like that." She let out a bitter laugh. "Well, he's out of the house, and out of my life. I'm filing for divorce next week." "Good for you," I said, genuinely glad to hear it. "If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here," she added. "Same," I said. The next few days were a blur of cleaning, organizing, and reclaiming the house as my own. I tore down the photos of Rachel and me, replacing them with artwork and personal mementos that didn't carry the weight of betrayal. I even rearranged the furniture, making the space feel new, untainted. Rachel, on the other hand, wasn't doing so well. Emily texted me a few days later. "Just so you know, Rachel's staying with Mom for now. She's a mess, Jack. I don't know if she's ever going to recover from this." I didn't respond. Rachel's recovery, or lack thereof, wasn't my responsibility. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with them. As for Brian, Claire wasn't done with him yet. A few days after Rachel left, Claire posted a scathing update on social media. She named names, tagged locations, laid everything out for the world to see. Brian's reputation was in ruins. His career prospects weren't looking much better. One evening, as I sat on the couch, Duke curled up beside me. I scrolled to the comments on Claire's post. People were ruthless. "What a scumbag." "Good for you, Claire. Kick him to the curb." "Cheaters never win. Hope he loses everything." I couldn't help but feel a grim sense of satisfaction. Brian and Rachel had built their relationship on lies and deceit, and now it was crumbling under its own weight. A week after Rachel moved out, I received an email from her. Subject: I know I don't deserve this. Jack: I know I don't have the right to ask for anything after what I did, but I just need to say this. I loved you. I still do. I was stupid and selfish, and I regret it for the rest of my life. Asterisk. I stared at the screen, unmoved. Then, without a second thought, I deleted the email, and I never looked back. I stared at Rachel's message for a long time before deleting it. I hope one day you can forgive me. Forgiveness wasn't something I could give her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And even if I could, it wouldn't change what she'd done. Rachel's betrayal had taken something from me, something I couldn't get back, but it had also given me something unexpected, the chance to start over. The next weekend, I met up with Eric at our usual bar. You look good, he said as we clinked glasses. Better than I expected, considering everything. I feel good, I admitted. Better, actually, like a weight's been lifted. Any word from Rachel? He asked. Nothing that matters, I said, taking a sip of my drink. He grinned. Good. You deserve better. For the first time in weeks, I genuinely believed that. Rachel had thought she could hide her double life forever, that she could keep me in the dark while she chased after something new and exciting. But secrets have a way of coming to light, and when they did, they left her exposed. As for me, I was finally free. In the weeks after Rachel left, the house transformed. It wasn't just the physical changes, new furniture, repainted walls, fresh decor. It was the energy. The weight of her lies and betrayal was gone. And for the first time in years, the space finally felt like mine. I felt at peace. But Rachel wasn't done trying to claw her way back. One evening, I was scrolling through my emails when her name popped up again. Subject: I know I said I wouldn't bother you. Asterisk: Jack. I know I said I wouldn't bother you anymore, but I need to say this. Losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. I thought I wanted something new, something exciting, but all it did was destroy everything that mattered. I hope you can find happiness. Even if it's not with me, you deserve that. Asterisk: I deleted the email without replying. I wasn't angry anymore. I just didn't care. Meanwhile, life was moving forward. Claire and I stayed in touch, exchanging occasional texts about how we were each rebuilding. She was strong, sharp-witted, compassionate, and before long, our conversation shifted from friendly to something more. One Friday evening, she invited me out for coffee. I think we've earned a little break from the chaos, she said, laughing softly. I agreed, and we spent hours talking about everything and nothing. It felt easy, natural, like reconnecting with an old friend. When I dropped her off at her house, she hesitated before getting out of the car. Jack, she said, her voice quiet. I'm glad we met, even if the circumstances weren't ideal. Me too, I replied. As the weeks turned into months, our connection deepened. We were both cautious, neither of us in a rush to jump into something serious. But there was an undeniable chemistry between us. One night, as we walked Duke through the park, she slipped her hand into mine. Do you think this is crazy? She asked, her tone teasing but laced with genuine curiosity. A little, I admitted, but maybe crazy's not so bad. She smiled, leaning her head against my shoulder. Rachel, on the other hand, had faded into the background of my life. Her family occasionally reached out with updates, but I kept my responses short and polite. The last I heard, she was living in a small apartment on the other side of town, struggling to find steady work after the fallout at her firm. Brian was a distant memory, too. Claire's scorched earth approach had left his reputation in tatters. Last time we spoke, she mentioned he'd moved out of state to start over. As New Year's approached, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed in a year. What had started as a night of betrayal had turned into an opportunity to rebuild, to let go of what was broken, to embrace something new. This time, I spent the evening with Claire. No parties, no crowded countdowns. Just the two of us, sharing drinks and stories by the fire. As the clock approached midnight, she turned to me, her eyes soft and searching. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Better than I've been in a long time." She smiled. "Good. You deserve that." When the countdown began, we stood on her balcony, watching fireworks light up the sky. And as the clock struck 12, Claire leaned in, brushing her lips against mine in a kiss that felt like a promise. This wasn't just the end of a year. It was the start of something new. Rachel had thought her midnight kiss with Brian would stay hidden, that her betrayal would never catch up to her. But secrets have a way of finding their way into the light. And as I stood there with Claire, the woman who had emerged from the same storm, stronger and wiser, I realized something. The best revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about rebuilding. And that's exactly what I'd done.